there is a lot of people in the industry, in all sorts of industries really, that have dyslexia. I know Steven Spielberg, as an example, he's a film director and producer and a writer. So, you wouldn't think someone like that could have those skills. I think people think, oh, you have this, you'll never be able to do that because of that disadvantage. But that's something that people can prove wrong. I don't think it should always be about proving wrong, because sometimes you can do things for the wrong reason, but it is definitely great fuel, and there's a lot of people that do that. They are at a disadvantage. They have people, teachers, parents, society saying, you can't do that. And then that leads them on to thinking, I want to prove them wrong, or I want to pursue my dreams, and then they go and do that. I think that's really great. But I think as well, a lot of these people do have other reasons, or they did find their own methods to cope with it. I know Edgar Wright is someone with ADHD, because I have ADHD, and growing up I thought, oh, I couldn't be successful because, all these other people mustn't have ADHD to be successful, because in order to be successful you have to be this or that. And then I realized a lot of people do, and there's a lot of people self-diagnosing as well, which I don't think is always right, because I think that, having ADHD and, having a lack of attention span are both very different things in how you function. And a lot of people do just have a lack of attention span today. But at the same time, there is probably a lot of people on that waiting list with autism, ADHD, dyslexia, who are not been diagnosed. I know my older brother is one of those people, actually, who has recently been diagnosed. And, it's kind of changed his outlook on a lot of things. So I was going to say, at what age were you actually diagnosed? Do you remember?
Oh, think about 15.
15?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was put through by the school and my doctor, and we had to pay diagnosis. But it was worth it.
I was diagnosed very young, so I don't really remember that whole process. I always remember having ADHD, whereas a lot of people who've been diagnosed later on, they remember a life before. I guess it's weird, because I think about people who've gone blind, and the difference between people who've been born blind. Because if you're born blind, that's all you know. But say if you go blind and you're 20, then you know a life of color and a life of vision, and then that's stripped away from you.
Yeah.
So did it really change the way you approach things, or was it one of those things where it's well, that's just me, that's how I am, I don't know any better?
It was people's understanding of why I might find things a bit more difficult, and that it wasn't just me. And that I had access to extra support for GCSEs and things.
So I think you mentioned about having the text-to-speech
text-speech.
Well. Did you get extra time in your exams?
Extra time. I had someone with me to read the questions, write out things. I had my own room, quiet room.
Yeah, so how did you find that? Because, personally, because I had ADHD, I did my mocks separately with, extra time and in, those circumstances. But I came to the conclusion that I just didn't like it. I didn't need the extra time. I found the extra time was actually annoying, because it meant it was time I couldn't leave, and I had to just sit there in silence for an extra 40 minutes sometimes when I was already done. And it also meant that, not to be rude, but there was a lot of problem people that were in these spaces. And you'd be sitting there and they'd be trying to distract other people, because they had headphones, they'd be taking advantage of the text-to-speech and typing out stupid stuff and listen to it back and trying not to laugh.
Yeah.
And I found that, for me personally, I just wanted to be on the same level as everyone else, and I wanted to just be in that exam hall with all the other people. I also found that when I was in those other spaces, I kind of got taken the mick out of by everyone else, saying, oh, you're at a disadvantage, you got an advantage over everyone else, you're lucky, this and that, or trying to say that I've not had to do the exam in the right way. So for you, how did it feel for you, having that extra time or being in that separate space?
I found it, for me, it was very helpful. Especially having someone read out the questions to me and help write out things, because my handwriting was really bad. And just having that extra time, I don't have to worry about rereading the questions 3 times and taking up all my time trying to read things and rewrite things. And that was all sort of done and supported with someone else with me.
Yeah.
So I felt like I could understand the questions better as well, having someone talk to me what the question says and not what I think it says.
Yeah. I know there's obviously
very
guidelines
helpful.
around that. They're not just going to tell you exactly because it's
No,
kind of cheating, or they're not going to correct you if you say something that's wrong.
no.
But at the same time, I guess it can still help.
Yeah, and I wasn't really getting on with other people at that time. I was getting bullied quite a lot, so I was quite happy to have a room to myself.
Yeah, because we don't need to go into anything too personal, but I know that a lot of people on the spectrum tend to get bullied, or they tend to
Yeah.
get picked on, and sadly, I think it's always going to be the case that there's going to be people that get picked on, and there's going to be people that pick on people for reasons, you know. But at the same time, why do you think that is? Like, is it because we just don't fit into what other people consider as normal? Or
Yeah, I think because might be slightly different, or we're treated differently by teachers. I've met people that act out because they don't feel like they're being supported, and they've sort of given up on their education. They just mess about or they become violent in some cases.
yeah,
That they just can't cope with it, and
I
it's
mean,
quite sad.
with school as well, I found that it was all exam based. There was no sort of coursework and self development in that, and it felt like everything was just the leading up to this one exam. It's like 5 years of work was all for this one,
Yeah,
you know, moment. Whereas I found with college and university, and like when I've worked at places, that you know every day you're working towards a common goal, and
personal growth.
yeah, personal growth as well. I did not understand a single thing about personal growth or personal motivation to work, you know, being able to have reasons to study without getting distracted. I didn't understand any of that until I got to college and figured it all out for myself. But back in school, I didn't even know how to approach studying in a productive way. I didn't know how to sort of revise, how to cram. I just thought that you had to just do multiple hours of work because you know that's what people say as a stereotype. You know, you just see everyone looking stressed, sat around textbooks. But
Yeah,
every time I try to read a textbook, nothing goes in. I have to have
Yeah.
a goal. Being ADHD, I really just have to have lots of short-term and long-term goals in order to function. If I don't, I can just easily go off the rails in my head because I just don't know what to do.
yeah.
Don't know about you. So how is that mentally having dyslexia? You know, in terms of like short-term, long-term goal setting, does that help you get through the day?
Yeah, I'm very much a visual planner. I can't just
Yeah.
write things out and then there it is. It all just gets lost.
Sort of imagine what you're working towards.
Yeah.
You try and envision.
Yeah, I try and I mean that's why I'm very creative. I'm an artist.
Yeah.
So visual stuff is my thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's working towards things visually is yeah.